For people who want to avoid narcissists or worry they might have a narcissist in their life currently, what's a couple phrases or sentences they say that secretly programs you to stay trapped, have trauma, and never trust yourself again, even decades later?
Oh, I think great question. And I think there are many statements. Our programming growing up often keeps us focused on others. So when we ask all of our questions that's other focused, that keeps us entrapped. And it's hard to break free from the narcissist when our whole focus is on the narcissist. And that's the sleight of hand that goes along with living with or being in a narcissistic relationship, or even having a narcissist parent. And that sleight of hand is your focus is in the wrong place, and it keeps you coming back time and time again. Other kinds of mental statements or mental beliefs would be things such as limiting beliefs, like, if I truly was my genuine self, there would be many downsides to that, and fears and concerns. And so let me avoid that and be a people pleaser, or, let me stay stuck in the enmeshment. And often when there is a narcissist, in fact, most all dysfunctions involve enmeshment emotionally, overfusion and overconnection. And anxiety and these limiting beliefs just keep us right stuck in that family or in that system with them.
And so, along those lines, like, what are some things that narcissists commonly say to people that will lead to this thinking, people pleasing, enmeshment, toxic patterns later on in life?
Oh, and well, narcissists have a whole library and menu of phrases and things that they say to keep your focus off of you. And in some ways, maybe even focusing on yourself, because they would be critical, negative. They will tap into any dysfunctional problem you had growing up as a child. They will tap into those buttons in the comments they make, how they treat you. And so they treat you badly enough because they don't have the empathy. They don't know how to love, and they don't care. They are just trying to have a transactional relationship with their victims and people who are suffering with them. And they will make these kinds of statements that will trigger us from our past and things that have been unresolved. And they just kind of know this intuitively. And then if we start to pull away or start to get a little healthier, then what does a narcissist do? Then they start love bombing. Well, you're wonderful and you're great and I've always loved you, and I've always cared about you, and blah, blah, blah. Then when we come back in, then they start back on the narcissistic criticisms, control, manipulation. And those statements can be, all kinds of, if you ever left me, nobody'd ever want you anyway. And so there's that kind of denigration of a sense of worth, and narcissists are pretty good at doing that, and have been and probably, if you've been in a relationship, have been for a long time, have done that.
So if people hear some of these phrases and suspect that they may be dealing with a narcissist, what are some of the things they should never say back to a narcissist that could make their life worse?
Well, first of all, I train and try to educate people in the way of resisting being defensive, resisting changing the narcissist, resisting arguing and trying to explain yourself, because those are all wasted efforts. It's not going to change the narcissist. Even and when a narcissist says, I don't think anybody would love you if you ever left me. And then if the person said, well, I had some relationships before you, there were people who loved me, or I think I could find somebody who would love me beyond you. And again, if you notice, I'm being defensive. I'm trying to convince them of the wrongness of their thinking, which again only will begin to increase the anxiety between the two of you, and it won't change the narcissist. They're not going to come around and go, you're absolutely right. You had a couple of relationships before you. Oh, I don't know why I said that. Narcissists don't do that. They're not listening. And so what we want to do is to learn to remain calm, learn to remain non-reactive, which is not agreeing with what they're saying, but being non-reactive, because that reactivity will push us into defending ourselves or explaining or telling them they're wrong. Do you know, that's about as useless attack as can be, to tell a narcissist they're wrong. You're wasting words doing that. Just absolutely wasting words. And the principle under that is when we are explaining or defending ourselves, we're using normal rules, but for an abnormal relationship. And so that's why I say, don't defend yourself. And they're going, well, that doesn't sound normal. It isn't. You don't have a normal relationship. That if you had a normal relationship, then you would tell your friend, hey, I'm not sure I agree with that. I had 2 relationships before. We then have the normal kind of back and forth. But in an abnormal relationship, we cannot use normal rules of relationships. You will get stuck and ate up every time.
So do you think it's possible for somebody to survive a relationship with a narcissist, or do you think they should just run as soon as they see the signs?
Well, I think the great book by Marjalis Fjellstead, hard name for me to remember, and it's Stop Caretaking the Borderline and Narcissist. And she's a family therapist who has been through this personally. And she talks about, what do you do if you stay in, and what do you do, or how do you decide to leave? And she said that's an individual decision. If there's physical abuse, there's certain things we just can't tolerate. But just like all things, narcissists are on a continuum. They're not all the same. There's very malignant narcissists, and there's kind of milder, covert narcissists. And so she has a very, I think, balanced approach as a marriage and family therapist. And it's a great book. She does a great job with that. And if you're going to stay, you have to see reality. If you're going to leave, you have to look at and see reality. My job when I try to coach people is to help them see reality either way. They then can choose what, because if they come to me and go, well, I know I've been married for 30 years, my husband's a narcissist, or I think he is, and but we've had some good times now and then, and we have kids, we have adult kids now, and when they say, actually we're in couples therapy, he has his own therapist, although her therapist has told her, I think you're only going to see micro changes in your husband, not a conversion on the road to Damascus. He's not going to just become not a narcissist. And so if she keeps holding on to the hope that someday it will be this big change for him, that's not dealing with reality. And so if you want to stay, let's at least burst that fantasy. Then you can take control of your life and what you want to do with that. But I don't want you thinking, oh, well, he when he love bombs me, it's so wonderful. Okay, it may be, but that love bombing will end. Then it'll start again. Then it will end. Then it will start again. And so helping them see the facts about the system, then we can make better choices. And so that's kind of what I do to help people in those kind of situations. Do I stay? Do I go? And well, what's your real situation that you have? And you'll be able to make a better choice. But let's not live on the fantasies of, your husband hasn't done this for 30 years, hasn't made these changes. Now, you think in the next 6 months he's gonna, it's probably not a good bet. Just not a good bet.
Regarding like taking control and decision making and deciding whether you're going to stay or go, etc. You mentioned like one of the biggest hacks for people when they're in this type of relationship is to not get defensive, learn how to emotionally regulate themselves. What are some other things that somebody can do to take back control of themselves when they're in a narcissistic relationship other than not getting defensive?
Sure. Not getting defensive, because recognizing defensiveness is pretty useless. It's not going to serve you. I know that would be a natural feeling to want to do, but I don't do things that are natural when they don't serve me. Staying calm, learning to stay calm, and some of that involves doing the work of detachment, learning to be detached. I use a kind of a technique of Coca-Cola language. When somebody says, Jerry, you're stupid and you're the worst coach in the world, what I usually interpret that differently and go, they're calling me a Coca-Cola. Now, how upset should I be about that? I'm not a Coca-Cola. So, and just like if a narcissist says you're the worst wife in the world, and it's like, it's just noise. And that helps reduce the hurt and us not taking it personally. Narcissists are not well. They are going to say not well things. Be careful about personalizing it. It's their madness. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying their madness is an easy thing to deal with, but am I going to get caught up in their belief system, which is totally distorted? And so we want to gain some sense of self and detachment inside, going, well, I wish he wouldn't call me that, but there's no way possible that's true. There's no way in the world. It's ridiculous. Now, I wouldn't tell them that. I wouldn't tell the narcissist that, because they must always be viewed as being serious and superior and in control of the situation. So you start telling them that they're not, now you're going to have a more highly charged situation. I want to keep me under control, which can improve the relationship system control and what's managed there. So detachment, reframing this craziness that they're saying, no matter even how hurtful it is. Because if someone says something really, really hurtful, it's like, do I believe that about me? Jerry, you're the ugliest man in the world. Well, I know I'm not Brad Pitt. I'll grant you that. But ugliest? I don't know. I've seen a few that might beat me with that. And what does it matter anyway? And it doesn't matter. So finding more detachment inside, which also helps me with inner boundaries. In other words, I don't want your words to get into my inner boundaries. And I want to be careful not to get inside your inner dialogue. I got to stay on my side of the tennis net. I'm not going to get involved in the narcissist whole inner dialogue, because you will be going down the rabbit hole. which then just takes the focus off yourself and doesn't get you anywhere, because their thinking oftentimes cannot be even sorted out. But we'll get, oh, well, why would they say that? What did I do that caused them to say that? Am I really that way? You know, I've always kind of felt bad about myself. Maybe there's some truth to this. Now I'm all into their inner dialogue. Get out of there. Get out of there and stay out of there. I don't know if those things would be helpful, but those are some helpful tips I tried to give people.
How are narcissists created?
Well, that's $1 million question. Do you have $1 million? I'll answer that for you. No, and I'm not sure I could even answer it for you then. We know it's a combination of things. And I think there are many people, as I've worked for therapy for years and studying this topic and researching things and being a marriage and family therapist, a pastoral counselor, a social worker, a addictions therapist. I've worked on thinking about these things because I used to work with families of addicted and alcoholic folks. And so these were important questions. How did this start? For the narcissists and personality disorders, we don't have all the answers. It's genetics, it's nature, it's nurture, it's family transmission of psychological trauma. It can be abuse, traumatic abuse that a child may experience. Many people will say, well, nobody can be a narcissist without having abusive or narcissistic parent or parents. That's not been my experience. I haven't seen that. And having worked in a psychiatric clinic for many years, there are many exceptions to the rule. So I think it's better to say it's a combination of things that create this, from genetics to psychological, biochemical. It's just personality disorders are complicated. I mean, why is somebody hypochondriacal? You know, they're always sick all the time, and they have a hypochondriacal personality disorder. You know, tell me exactly where that began and how it happened. Well, we just don't have that knowledge. We have some pointers, and I think those are fair, but I just am always worried when somebody just says, well, this is what I believe. This is the orthodoxy I believe, the doctrine that I'm going, be careful, because there are exceptions to that. Just like having a child who becomes a narcissistic adult and the parents are not narcissists. How did that happen? You know, and they'd say, oh, well, then the parents are lying. Well, I don't know. I've worked with the parents for years. I haven't found them lying. You know, they're not narcissists. What do I do with that?
You know, in the word narcissist, part of the reason I wanted to even start talking about narcissism in general was because I felt the word was so overused that I think people become desensitized to it now, and people don't understand that like true narcissists can be very like dangerous. And one of the common phrases you hear is, oh, my father was narcissistic, my mother was narcissistic. What are the actual signs that somebody was raised by somebody who was a narcissist? Like, how does that play out?
And I think you're right. It is a common word used for lots of different things. If you don't like someone, you can call them a narcissist. You know, I mean, it's used in very loose ways. Let me first talk about how would we know and if someone's a narcissist. And then second of all, I want to talk about how I use the term and why I use the term and what I'm hoping to do with the folks who come. Because, and maybe start with the second question first. If they want to start by coming and everything is narcissistic, that's fine. Because I'm going to take you to where I want you to focus on you. But it's okay if you go, oh, my parents were narcissists. You can call everybody narcissist if you want, but I want to take you to a different place. So you can call them all a banana if you want, but I want you to eventually come to learn you and to self-differentiate as a healthy adult. And so that's kind of the second point. And the first point is, you're right. There are different types of narcissists. And in fact, there's some books out there that really describe some of those well. It's not just a one bucket thing. You have which many know, malignant narcissists. Those are the not good at all folks, and probably are narcissistic with psychopathic or sociopathic traits. Those are the dangerous, not good folks, because they have no conscience, and they're not aware of their own impact on other people, or if they are, it's only transactional. It's not emotional. And then you have on the other end of the continuum people who have narcissistic traits. And again, we even go through a developmental phase in which narcissism is healthy. We have healthy narcissism in our development. We just don't want to not have empathy and not have, we want to continue to develop as adult and care about ourselves, care about others, and have some altruism in our lives. And most people do that. That's the development of what most people do. And so there is, but it is used a lot for a lot of different things these days. And I've just become less worried about it because of what I want to do and what I'm trying to bring. So I'm going, okay, call everybody in your whole realm narcissists. Now, what about you? What are you going to do to heal you? What are you going to do? And there are some people that are very much benefited, and I talk to them often, where they've been married to somebody for 30 years, 35 years, and go, I never even thought that he could be a narcissist or she could be a narcissist. I never even thought that was a possibility. This opens up a whole new way of thinking for me, and they fit all the criteria, of no guilt, no empathy, very self-focused, often grandiose, and will be controlling and manipulative, and all the traits that go along, which people can look that up, Google that, and find that everywhere. And as they learn that, they go, oh, well, that's a whole different template that I then put on my marriage and my relationship that now helps me to be more empowered about what do I need to do for me? What do I need to do in this relationship? And again, they're starting to get more realism in their relationship. The one thing I do try to do is try to help people if they can, because sometimes diagnoses can overlap. Bipolar can look like narcissism. Alcoholism can look like narcissism. So mood disorders, and it is good if you kind of, want to talk to someone who's a good professional in that realm to make more of a differential diagnosis. Because I know of some people, they've come and said, oh, my husband, was a narcissist. He goes and gets evaluated and he really is bipolar, because they can look very much like that, but it's from a different source. It's biochemical or brain oriented. And that's different than personality disorder. So, but now I'm in the weeds. Sorry, Doug. I sometimes go there.
Well, it's all good. So, what do you think? What do you think are the biggest signs of somebody's 30 or 40 years old? How are they behaving if they were raised by a narcissist, or what do their relationships look like?
Oh, I think if they're raised by a narcissist, they're probably going to have a lot of self-image, self-worth problems. Now, maybe they have been the golden child, which then you can have a little different dynamic with that. But oftentimes it's more, you're very, very strongly self-critical, low self-esteem, feeling unworthy, can't acknowledge your successes, or you're never good enough. You may have feelings of needing to be perfect because you've always had to be perfect with a narcissistic parent. You have been controlled and manipulated often in a narcissistic home, and you were just never allowed to breathe as to who you really are. That was never, there's no room for that. There's no space for that in a narcissistic home. And so when they become an adult, you feel you're being suffocated in life. Or I might use the analogy, you feel you're drowning in the lake, but you're only standing in a bucket of water. And that's the adult child of a narcissist kind of experience. Or we feel there's a lion in the room and we have this great amount of anxiety, but there's no lion there. Well, there was years ago, a parent who was the lion. And we always had to, be on the lookout for that and what was coming next.
You talked about the golden child. That's really interesting you bring that up, because a lot of times when people think about being raised by a narcissistic parent, they think about, oh, they didn't meet my needs. They were like emotionally abusive or whatever. Like, talk about why like getting too much praise and being put on this pedestal can actually be a sign of being raised by a narcissistic parent as well.
Sure. Well, because the narcissistic parent lives out their life through the kids. That's not uncommon for many parents, but it's a unique situation when it's a narcissist. I talk with folks who have a family of, say, 3 siblings and them. 3 of the siblings of the 4 are treated badly and not and very much manipulated, put down. Then we have the one who may be a golden child in the family. They can do no wrong. They are loved by the narcissist because the narcissist gets some supply from them emotionally. They're going to go do great things. Oh, they're my honor student. They're my favorite athlete. My dad was a coach and a principal. He would be, say, basketball, and Jim liked to play basketball, my brother. Well, that's something Dad liked. So that's a very positive thing, and he likes that. Whereas the sports I was in, what are those? Those aren't real sports. Swimming, tennis, that's not real. And so the golden child is the person who gets the favors and none of the criticism, or very little, but they then have to live in this golden child cocoon or cage in which they always must be pleasing and approving to their narcissistic parent and be successful. Well, I know one person. I remember his father was a neurologist, and then he became a very, very prominent neurologist. He never wanted to go into medicine because you're going to be the standard for this family and the success of being a neurologist like your grandfather and like me and then like you. You're going to do great research and da 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 da. And then he can't do guitar or music like he wants. He can't, he's got to spend all of his time being successful. It's hard to have relationships when you got to achieve all that. So it can be a problem. I do think golden child, while has its benefits, there are the downsides of being a golden child. Many people will criticize me and say, oh, but I'd rather be a golden child. Well, I understand than being abused. And yeah, I'd probably rather be a golden child. But I'd rather be me and no role is what I'd rather be. I don't want to be a role of a black sheep, a scapegoat, or a golden child. I would like to be Jerry. That's what I'd like to be. That's who I'd like to be.
This episode is brought to you by Live On Labs. If you are someone who is constantly stressed, feeling depleted, and exhausted, I have some exciting news. My friends at Live On Labs have an incredible deal I can offer you. When you buy any product at full price, you get a free carton of their highly popular B-complex product, which I take every day. Taking a B-complex supplement can also help support things like a healthy metabolism, increased energy, blood sugar balance, and learning. Vitamin B supplements can help replenish nutrients depleted from stress. Live On Labs puts years of research into each product, which is why I stand behind them. Using liposome encapsulation technology, these products promote elite absorption so the supplements get into your cells and give you the best benefits that you're looking for. Right now, you can get a free carton of Lipospheric B Complex Plus, which is a $56 value with any full price purchase from liveonlabs.com. This supplement has the B vitamins and minerals that you need to help turn food into sustained natural energy throughout the day. Just add B Complex Plus and any other full price supplement to your cart and enter code BOPES24 at checkout to get this amazing deal. Now back to the show. We've covered dating a lot on the podcast, and I think it's an important conversation. We're talking about signs, we're talking about relationships. If somebody's early on, they're just meeting somebody like for the first or second time, what are some things or behaviors that narcissists exhibit that should cause somebody to run as fast as possible?
Great question, Doug. That's a good one. I have really not many people have asked me that question, but I think it's a good one. The one thing to remember, a narcissist can love bomb. In other words, they can mirror behaving well and even mirror empathy, but it's not genuine. It's just they've seen someone do that and they know to do that, that this is what you do. So it can be a little tough early on because they can be charming. Narcissists can be charming. And then be evil, and then be problematic. And so being aware of that. But see, that's where I also tell people, if you're falling for someone too quickly, see that as a red flag. Because my hunch is that may not serve you. There are other dynamics you're not seeing that you're just, we just had these 2 dates that were just absolutely phenomenal. I think I could spend my life with him or her. Well, hold on. It sounds like you're more enmeshing with him or her than you are managing the relationship flow and the development of it. The other things that I suggest is, and I even tell clients who have divorced and then started dating, and what do I do to kind of find out who's who? Disagree with your partner. Not in a horrible way, not in a mean way, but just disagree with them. See what happens. And it can be on a minor thing even. Say no. See what happens. Also, you want to be aware of, do they feel empathy? Do they feel empathy for the waiter, the waitress, the other people? Are they demonstrating some empathy? And then also, do they ever talk about feeling guilty? And many times they won't. There is no guilt. And I believe, and in fact, I've even advised people, if they've had trouble with relationships in the past, there's a great book called Psychopath Free. And it's a good book to read, educate yourself in going out there, because I'm afraid we have a lot of psychopaths in our society, even neighbors, even who don't have the empathy, who don't have the, they may have a little sociopathic, edge to them. And I think it's much more common than people realize. So if you educate yourself, you can kind of watch for some signs or cracks in the wall and go, and trust your gut when you see a crack in the wall. Don't go, oh, well, I don't want to be too judgmental. Yeah, but if they treated the waiter badly for no good reason, that's a red flag. Hold on. What did that waiter do to you? And they'll justify it, and they have every good reason why they did that. And then you could even say, well, I understand you're free to do whatever you want to do, Betty. But I think I would have handled that differently. And see what they say. See how they deal with that. Do they get upset? Do they brush you off? Do they, because a relationship has to do with give and take. And they may not be too good with give and take. They may like the take part. So those are some suggestions that I might offer to folks.
And how can people heal from all of this? Like, we're talking a lot about the signs, how to navigate things when they're in the process of finding out that somebody is a certain way. But let's just say, like, what's the best way to exit a relationship like this if they need to, without there being any sort of threat or harm or abuse that would follow?
Well, and that's where being in a relationship with a narcissist can be complicated, because it may not be easy to just walk away, because now the narcissists kind of have their hooks into you, and you also are propping up their ego and are part of their supply, so that they can feel worthy or important or powerful, or, you're providing a lot of things for them. And then when we say, I think this is really not for me, that's not good news to a narcissist. And so you may want to get some coaching or some help if you're going to do that, so you can do it effectively, safely, and with good planning. Don't expect the narcissist to behave with normal relationship rules. That's what I've been trying to say. You have to understand they're not going to do that. So you need to be wise in how you handle this. And so get some help. Then in the healing part, let's say you have left and now you have some trauma or scars from the narcissist, then you work on the healing part of coming out of denial about that, working on getting yourself out of the chaos with the narcissist. And then the stage 3 I think of is the stage of self-differentiation, and using family systems approach and self-differentiation as a way to become the person, adult, mature person that is confident and not ruled by their wounds and trauma, and becoming yourself. And that's kind of and self-differentiation is a big part of the work that I help people do, because there's often way too much enmeshment going on in folks' lives, and overconnectedness emotionally, where we're on top of each other rather than have a relationship with each other. We're like this. Well, it's hard to maneuver. It's hard to be an adult when you're emotionally intertwined like that. And in fact, I have couples that come that are like this, and they say, we just don't feel very close. Could you help us be closer, Jerry? And I go, oh, I think that would be malpractice if I did that, because you're already like this. You probably are over close, but we don't feel over close. No, you may not. This doesn't feel over close. You may need more distance to actually have a relationship. And many people end up thinking, I just want to be closer and closer and closer. Too much closeness is water good for you? But is 12 gallons of water good for you? No. And so closeness is good for you, but not 12 gallons of closeness. You're going to poison yourself. And many people's relationship have become poisoned in that way.
If you were to create a blueprint for somebody to heal and to differentiate themselves and to become whole so that they could have healthier relationships moving forward, including the one with themselves after, being in toxic patterns and relationships, what would that blueprint look like?
Well, there would be 3 parts, but I would involve some other things. One is helping them learn self-awareness. Number 2, self-regulation. And number 3, self-definition. And that I would also say, how is your family of origin functioning in you today? And people would go, oh, I don't even see them. What do you mean? How are they? Well, as I remember doing a video, and it was called All Divorces Start in Childhood. Because they do. And I'm not saying that to blame the family of origin. Everybody thinks I'm trying to blame. No, blame is a very bad thing. And it's a bad thing in the system's understanding. But recognizing how you fit in the system will enlighten your understanding so that you then can begin to function better as an adult. And so I would train them and teach them, which is what I do in my programs and workshops and stuff. Let's talk about what's actually going on. You now have this enmeshed relationship with your husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend. Okay, where did that start? I'm sorry, it didn't start with this relationship. It started way a long time ago. And are you functioning in that family way right now? Because the family has the Wi-Fi, the super self of the family that continues on throughout our life. That's how connected we are. Now, that's not doom and gloom. Self-differentiation is learning to become more self-differentiated from that so that it doesn't have that power to affect me in my relationships and work. And, people who grew up in alcoholic homes then go work at a hospital and find out the department functions like an alcoholic family. Now, why is that? Because they're still operating in their alcoholic family in here, even though everyone has passed away in that family, let's say. But it's what's in here, not what they're doing. It's what I began with in the programming that I did. And that programming can be changed significantly and can really bring about more freedom. And so it would be that kind of a path that I would help people. And I think even reactivity. If someone is reactive, if I go, and reactivity, somebody can get upset over something. Often reactivity is the family system working in you right now. So if you're being reactive, you're probably your family's, that family programming and system that you're operating is still operating right now. Because oftentimes reactivity, just like defending yourself, somebody says, hey, Doug, I just think you have the worst podcast in the world. Now you can defend yourself. Say, well, I have a lot of listeners. I have a lot of, and I think it's even rude that you said that. And how dare you, question my success? And do you know what all that is? That's family unresolved. Because what they said to you really could have no meaning at all. Why does it give you meaning? Why do you take it as meaningful? I mean, okay, I tell people, they say, oh, well, I don't like you. Find somebody else. There are lots of vegetable stands out there. Go buy your vegetables somewhere else, as the psychiatrist I work for would always say. Then go to another vegetable stand. That's fine. Maybe I'm not for you. No problem. But if I become reactive, then oftentimes I'm becoming reactive to something long ago in this situation. And if I'm not aware of that, it makes it more difficult to make progress. It does make it so. I like to make things, I like to zoom out, which is what a family systems approach, which I take, does, rather than zoom in and go, okay, now you're being reactive. Okay, instead of saying that, Doug, say this in that moment of reactivity. That's kind of a silo approach. And it can be helpful, but I like to zoom out so that we can fix the larger pattern and not just the A causes B, B causes C. I like the system approach.
Are you familiar with Lee Hammock, mental illness?
I am not.
So he's a medically diagnosed narcissist, and he created a channel to talk about his experiences with all that and how he's worked on himself and it's improved his marriage, his mental health, like his world and stuff. And I bring that up is because, like, do you think that it's possible if they put the work in for a narcissist to actually change?
I believe anything is possible. The proof is in the pudding. So hey, if putting crystals on your head and whistling Dixie will changes your life, how am I not a believer? I mean, and I believe, do I believe some narcissists can change? Of course, we're talking about human beings. We are a very complicated organism and being. And, there's certainly it can be. And I know people who work with the narcissist. I tend to work with the families and children and things like that, adult children and such. But who am I to say, and I, even from my own religious past, having been a pastor and a bishop years ago, that, if somebody got healed, and their arm got healed whenever. I remember a doctor practiced healing in the community where I was at. And if they're healed, they're healed. Who am I to say they didn't? And they go get an x-ray and it's not broken. What am I to, but I'm not sure I would apply that to all people who break their arm.
So we're both content creators and create content on social media. And there's also been people who have said that social media has fueled more self-centeredness, narcissism, stuff like that. Like, how do you believe social media impacts narcissists and vice versa?
Well, I think it's always dangerous to talk about correlation versus causation. I've seen, when on TikTok and Instagram or whatever, I mean, everybody has become a movie star. I mean, as you, I'm sure, have noticed the, and just how they look and how they, now, has it, does it create narcissism, or is it something that we may be narcissistic and then want to do it? So again, I think it's more complicated, and also, can people do it for a while and grow out of it? Can people, I just think it has such a complicated role, and different people experience it differently. Some people become depressed because they are bullied on social media. Other people laugh at the people who bully them and just think it's ridiculous. So it depends on the person themselves. Do I think it causes more? But then again, you're talking about cause again. And can I be just environmentally made into a narcissist? And I have a hard time with that. I just have a hard time with that. Can it affect us? Certainly. Could it cause someone to be? I suppose that's possible. But I'm just real cautious about making that clear line between, no different than video games, violence. What's the connection? Does that cause more shootings? Does it cause more? Well, it could for somebody, but it might not for somebody else. And so it can be kind of a wild card. And so until we know more, I think it's good to try to use social media as healthily as we can. I mean, I think that's always good advice, and that also we want to have moderation. And I think moderation is just so important with so many different things. If you're on, and I've known people who've been on Facebook 8 to 12 hours a day. Do you think that could be problematic? Well, yes, I think that's probably not a good plan. But how many? I don't know that I could even be on Facebook for 12 hours, even if I wanted to. So different people, and there can be addiction to TikTok, addiction to swiping. It does kind of, it's kind of titillating to do the swiping and the looking and all that. And of course, I'm an old guy, so you have to take some of it with a grain of salt here, but because I didn't grow up with social media like this. But could it be problematic? Yes. Could there be usefulness of some controls and limitations? Probably so. I don't like lots of misinformation or hate, or we have freedom of speech and all that. Yeah, but now we have such a megaphone, and what does that mean in freedom of speech when, the megaphone is so much larger and louder, and, and I think Congress is kind of behind the times and trying to be of help in that area, but Congress is probably behind the times on a lot of things. It has been since the beginning.
Last thing, really quick, rapid fire. What are 3 big myths around narcissism you see?
I would say that narcissists are always malignant narcissists. And that if you're a narcissist, you're this one type of narcissist. And that everybody needs to fit into that if they're a narcissist. That's one big myth that I've found. Number 2, that narcissists can never be nice or love bomb or seem normal. They can, and they can also be charming. Narcissists are not just always critical, mean, demeaning, angry, rageful. That's not, that tends to be a myth. Thirdly, let me think of myths about narcissism. Will narcissists? Oh, there was something about not being able to. Now I've lost it.
Have empathy or anything?
Well, narcissists don't have empathy. A true narcissist doesn't have empathy. But there could be a myth in such a way that, well, my narcissist has empathy. And again, that may come from a misinterpreting what's going on, because narcissists can mirror, and sociopaths will mirror, psychopaths will mirror. They can look and see what people do and mimic it. And so they can look pretty normal, but it's not what's inside them. Whereas you and I might have a more genuine, if we feel empathy, we are feeling that, and a narcissist would more likely act like that. So those might be some myths.
Well, Jerry, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think my audience get a ton of value out of this. I really appreciate it.
Doug, it has been a pleasure. I'm so happy to be on your podcast and be invited to join you. I appreciate it. And like all you have done with your life and giving back, and I wish you all the success.
Thank you. And likewise, it's been great to connect.